perhaps tell the candidates what they ought to be concerned with. And I think it has been admitted that a lot of money has been spent on this campaign, but this will probably be some of the last opportunities that people will have to sort of hear the issues summarized outside of the media hoopla that generally accompanies this kind of discussion. Let's talk about the issues from the national Republican point of view nationally, and then we'll talk about it from the state point of view.
Well, the first issue starts with President Bill Clinton. Here's a man who ran as a new Democrat, and he starts governing as the old Democrat retread liberal. That's the first issue. That's what's driving all of this. That's what starts it and finishes it. You say you're from Hope, Arkansas. Your approval rating as Hope is probably higher than his is right now. He came in and said that he wanted to lead this country in a new direction, and yet he wants to take it back in the old direction that's already failed. That's the first issue, and that's what's driving these polls. That's what's driving the elections that have already occurred. When I have local candidates here in Tennessee tell me that Bill Clinton was an issue in their sheriff's race, then you know that is a prevailing issue in where he's taking the country. Issues that are on everybody's mind that we have to live with are crime. What are people doing about it? Is it just rhetoric, or there are really strong proposals? The 3 strikes and you're out proposal sounds good. Everybody liked it because it's a nice sound bite, but is it going to solve the problem? I think what you're going to find conservative candidates, whether they're Republican or Democrats, and there are good and bad on both sides, Dr. Haney. I'm not here to point fingers at anybody. Republicans tend to be more conservative and tend to be talking about how to solve the issues as opposing to defending Bill Clinton. But if it's crime, Republicans are talking about making parole harder to get, being tougher in the way that penalties are implemented, protecting the rights of citizens first rather than considering the rights of the accused. That's the type of things they're talking about. Welfare is another issue. People are tired of seeing kids have kids. They like what they see some Republican governors doing, like Tommy Thompson in Wisconsin, where he says, we want workfare. Let's give people a chance to get a hand up out of this, not give them a handout and keep them in bondage. And that's what people are talking about. They say other issues that we're considering are health care. And what we're finding most Tennesseans talk about, Dr. Haney, is they first want to consider how you make sure that 85% of Tennesseans who have health care are not disrupted. Once you can do that, then let's look at things like, how do you make sure people who change a job continue their health care? How do you give health care to those who aren't covered? Let's not change 85% totally to address the needs of 15%. Let's address those 15% and give them some opportunities like portability when you're going from a job, giving people the opportunity who have diseases that are diagnosed, or ailments diagnosed, opportunity to have insurance and not be barred from the insurance rolls. That's the sort of things that we ought to be considering. When you talk about crime, when you talk about welfare, when you talk about health care, I think most people want to see the government give alternatives, not dictate what we have to do.
Now, what do you think about in terms of the Republican position in terms of health care? I think you've already mentioned that as a major issue. Now, where do you stand in this state in terms of TennCare? How does the Republican Party see what the McWhorter administration has accomplished in that area?
I think the jury is still out. I think Governor McWhorter should be commended for addressing the issue. I think that over a few months period of time, it's hard to evaluate whether it's working for the patients, whether it's working for the doctors, and whether it's working for the hospitals and other health care providers. Once we've had that time go past and we can evaluate whether patients really are getting the quality of care that they deserve, the doctors are being treated fairly because they are the caregivers, and the hospitals who provide all of the infrastructure and all of the facilities are able to meet their obligations, those things ought to be considered. I do want to commend him for taking on the challenge. Let's not say it's good or bad yet. It's like anything else. When you change something that big, that much, let's find out what works and keep it, and what doesn't work, let's admit it and change it.
You know, I think one of the things that people have been concerned about is this whole idea of welfare. And we had a couple of persons from the Department of Human Services last week, and they talked about some of the problems in welfare. But now, how does the Republican Party see some of the solutions for public assistance? I think that all of us can identify some of the faults in reference to the public assistance. But in terms of developing programs, what do we see in the long run? I mean, what could the Republicans do in order to replace what we're doing now in public assistance?
I think you first have to look at it from a different perspective. You mentioned the word programs. Too often when something fails, it's one program that's replaced by another, then another, then another. Let's look at fundamentally what's wrong. I grew up on a farm, and I learned something about government assistance to agriculture. The more money you give to grow a crop, the more that will be grown. The more money we throw at welfare, the more we're going to have of it. The more lives that are going to be affected. I've yet to meet anyone on welfare who really likes it or who wouldn't like an opportunity to have a job. I think we ought to start looking at what, again, successful governors have done, like Tommy Thompson in Wisconsin and William Weld in Massachusetts, Republican governors who've said, let's not just terminate it right now and disrupt people's lives totally, but let's show them a way out. Let's get people involved in training. Let's give people an opportunity to work and make sure that if they have small children, that those children have an opportunity to be taken care of. Let's not make it profitable for somebody to stay on welfare. Why should someone, and I will be the first to admit this, why should someone who has Medicaid, who is getting a welfare assistance and has child care provided, go out and find a job when if they found that job they would lose all this and they'd be worse off? We ought to, as a government, say we need to wean people from this, but it's a weaning process and it's over time. But it shouldn't be a lifetime. Within a couple of years, someone should be able to get an assessment of their life, have an opportunity for job training, an opportunity to find a better way for child care, to get the training they need to go on and live a productive life. If they can't, then we need to look at saying, can this person find other opportunities? If not, at some point in time, they've got to take responsibility.